Hello and welcome to World News here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. The first direct talks between Ukraine and Russia since 2022 have started in Istanbul. Despite this diplomatic breakthrough, hopes of a deal, though, are slim. Let's go now live to our correspondent, Alex Kadi, who is in Istanbul for us. Alex, hello. So now, what can you say? You're there. Were these talks over before they even began?
Well, Diana, you really do get that feeling because we were all waiting for one man. Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine was here. The U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he was ready to come here. Other delegations could be represented as well if Vladimir Putin took a step towards peace, took a step towards the direct negotiations that he himself had asked for. Despite pressure from the international community, Vladimir Putin decided to stay away from peace talks and in Moscow. Nevertheless, junior delegations meeting. We've heard that there have been direct talks between the US and Ukraine. That includes the Secretary of State Marco Rubio with the Foreign Minister of Ukraine and other representatives. So certainly high-level talks between the US and Ukraine. We now understand in the last few moments that the head of the Russian delegation, Vladimir Mednitsky, will also start now by having a meeting with the United States directly. We also understand that perhaps the talks between the Ukrainians and the Russians will not include American representation. That was a request from the Kremlin's delegation to Istanbul. Now, that is certainly an interesting twist. It means that the direct talks, if and when they happen, will happen between Ukraine, Russia and Turkey, the host of these talks. But as President Zelensky said, and the mood music certainly in these talks, is that in Russia only one man makes the decisions, and that's Vladimir Putin. If he is not here, he cannot authorize or allow a breakthrough to end his war in Ukraine. So certainly some skepticism. Marco Rubio himself, the Secretary of State of the United States, saying the US does not have high hopes for progress in these talks. But nevertheless, you have this historic moment, these first direct talks between Ukraine and Russia since the full-scale invasion started in 2022. But again, European allies of Ukraine, we heard from Keir Starmer a few moments ago saying that Vladimir Putin is not serious about peace. And perhaps in preparation for these talks failing, Ursula von der Leyen of the European Commission saying that more sanctions may be needed. I'm sure we'll hear more about that from Angela Skujins in Tirana in a moment. But certainly you get the mood music, the tea leaves in the background. It seems, though, as the European allies do not have a lot of hope for these talks. Neither do the Americans, neither do the Ukrainians. Nevertheless, the delegations will meet and try to make progress to end the bloodshed.
And we'll have to see how that all plays out. Thank you so much, Alex Kadi, coming to us live from Istanbul. Ramping up political pressure on Russia has sat at the core of prime ministerial and presidential remarks at the beginning of high-level talks in Albania. And this comes at an important geopolitical moment for the Western Balkans, with elections reshaping the region. And as we heard our former correspondent right now, Alex Kadi, say, let's go now straight live to Angela Skujins, who is in Tirana. Now, Angela, that European political community summit, what can you tell us, and why have these leaders spoken so forcefully about keeping the heat on the Kremlin?
Yes, so the origins of the European Political Community Summit, it started in 2022 following Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So support for Ukraine has always sat at the core of this informal meeting, which today is set to take place in Albania. We had those prime ministers and presidents, 47 of them, already show up this morning. This included Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, which was not able to stop and speak to reporters, but we heard remarks from some of those senior officials, such as the EU High Representative Kaja Kallas, who said that the 17th sanctions package, which is expected to be formalised early next week, will keep the heat on the Kremlin. As we know, we just heard that there are those wafer-thin, turbulent ceasefire talks set to take place in Turkey today. So these leaders that are appearing in Albania, they're really here to show diplomatic and political support to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was also expected to show up. Rumour has it that he will not speak to the press. We are hoping for some potential remarks later today. But as my colleague just said, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said Putin is not meant to be trusted. We also got clarification from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen as to what the 18th sanctions package could include. It may include a ban on Nord Stream, that is that pipelined energy from Russia, as well as further sanctions on those shadow fleet vessels, as well as individuals responsible for propping up the finances of Moscow's war machine. We're expecting some more commentary later today, as well as a press conference scheduled for later this afternoon, where we're hoping for some more support for that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who was attempting to wade through the complexities in Turkey with his delegation there. But that's all from me. I'll send it back to you in Warsaw.
Thank you so much, Angela Skujins, coming to us live from Tirana. The defense ministers of Poland, Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and Italy, known as the E5, are meeting in Rome on Friday to discuss support for Ukraine and preparations for the upcoming NATO summit in June. Poland is represented by Defense Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz. Now, the discussions will focus on key strategic issues, security challenges, and strengthening European defense capabilities. According to the Italian Defense Ministry, coordinated support for Ukraine will also be a central topic as the war with Russia continues to threaten stability across the continent. The meeting, hosted at the headquarters of the Italian Air Force in Palazzo dell'Aeronautica, is part of an ongoing informal cooperation aimed at addressing current geopolitical challenges. The E5 format has already hosted gatherings in Paris, Warsaw, and Berlin this year. Now, this meeting comes as Russian and Ukrainian negotiators are also set to meet for their first direct talks in 3 years in Istanbul. Expectations for significant progress are tempered. However, as U.S. President Donald Trump recently said that no progress would occur without a meeting between himself and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The E5 ministers are expected to hold a press conference later today. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has replaced the country's commander-in-chief of the Russian ground forces, according to the Kremlin's statement on Thursday.
Shortly after the dismissal, Oleg Salyukov, who had held the office since 2014, was appointed the Deputy Secretary of the Russian Security Council. The 69-year-old army general has thus become the right-hand man to Russia's former defense minister, Sergei Shoigu, who currently serves as the country's council secretary. The Security Council is presided over by Vladimir Putin and is tasked with managing Russia's national security policy. Salyukov, who is on most Western countries' sanctions list, was mostly responsible for Moscow's Victory Day parades.
3 people have been wounded after a wave of Russian drones fell on the Ukrainian region of Odessa on Thursday night.
One of the victims is in critical condition in the wake of the attack. The rain of unmanned aerial vehicles also destroyed a number of buildings, including private houses, public utility buildings and a garage. The Ukrainian State Emergency Service dispatched 10 units and 37 firefighters to battle blazes that broke out at the sites of the strikes.
Residents of Kiev also woke up to a series of explosions as Russian drones targeted the city. According to local authorities, the attack resulted in a fire breaking out in the non-residential Sviatoshinsky district. No casualties have been reported in the Ukrainian capital so far.
The Ukrainian Air Force said the drones approached the city from the south and were tracked and engaged by Ukrainian air defense systems in the region. Responding to the attack, officials urged residents not to film or photograph the air defense efforts and remain in shelters until the all-clear signal is given. According to Mayor Vitaly Klitschko's post on Telegram, the drones reached Kyiv at 6:38 a.m. local time. The strikes came amid reports of a ballistic missile threat and ahead of the upcoming peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia.
Ukraine lost an F-16 fighter jet while repelling a Russian attack overnight, the country's Air Force wrote on Telegram.
According to preliminary data, the pilot destroyed 3 air targets and was preparing to destroy a 4th when an extraordinary situation occurred on board. The pilot proceeded to fly away from a populated area and ejected from the aircraft. He was quickly found in good condition and evacuated from the area. The Air Force indicated that the crash did not appear to be caused by Russian fire, and the commission had been appointed to investigate the circumstances surrounding the incident. This is the third F-16 that Ukraine has lost in combat as Russia continues its attack on the country. The first F-16s arrived in Ukraine on July 31, 2024. Kyiv has not disclosed the number of aircraft it has received. A coalition made up of Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands and Belgium pledged to donate some 60 planes.
At the European Union Military Committee meeting in Brussels on Thursday, General Wiesław Kukuła, Chief of the General Staff of the Polish Armed Forces, discussed NATO's response to recent incidents in the Baltic where a Russian fighter jet violated Estonia's airspace. The incident occurred when the Estonian Navy was escorting the tanker Jaguar, part of Russia's Shadow Fleet. Kukuła emphasized that the alliance's actions will become more robust with more forces involved and more decisive measures in place to respond swiftly to potential threats.
We discussed not just tactical matters, but also the future of Baltic operations and how we intend to respond moving forward. I can say with certainty that NATO's reaction to incidents like these will become more robust. We will engage greater forces and act more decisively. This means we'll demonstrate our readiness to respond more swiftly, for example, toward vessels or aircraft that refuse inspection or raise our suspicions. Will intercepts happen faster? Not necessarily, but our posture will clearly signal readiness.
And that completes this edition of World News here on TVP World. I'm Diana Skaya. Thanks for watching.